Hello, it's the Elephant Room Podcast with me, Frank, and Mr. Ian Hand. How's Ian?
I'm good, doing good, Frank. I'm really looking forward to this episode now, I'd say.
Yeah, we're a man down, as you might notice. We're a man down to the rugby, and I don't even know what rugby match is on, but Shane is watching it, and
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm sure Leinster or Munster, the boys are fucking moshing around the place doing what they do best. Shane lives in Dublin 4 now, so he has to watch the rugby.
yeah, it's a requirement, isn't it? That he's checked up on every now and again by the authorities.
I actually think you get booted out if you
Yeah.
if you're not watching the ruggers and wearing a scarf even though it's too hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode we're going to talk about something that is close to our hearts, which are albums, which are a dying format, but they still are out there in every type of form. People still release albums, people still like buying them, and they're not going to disappear forever, ever. If you think about it, there's something that isn't actually very old. It's only maybe 60 to 80 years that we actually have albums, like 1948 exactly was when they became like home use. Once again, to understand it, we need to go into the history of it. Have you ever wondered why an album is called an album? Because the only other type of album you can really think about is like a photo album.
Yeah, like a collection of photos, yeah, collection of songs, I don't know, yeah.
So why the hell do we call songs albums? And the reason is, before 1948, when LPs, long playing records, became mass produced for everybody to buy and enjoy, and you had full classical pieces on 22 minutes of vinyl record, or before you had 22 minutes of pop music all on one side. To listen to a collection of songs or a collection of classical music like that might run for half an hour, you had sets of 78 RPM records that only had 2.5 minutes of music on it. So obviously if you had, Four Seasons or some Vivaldi thing or something like that, it would run for, well over 2.5 minutes. So you'd need a lot of records. So they used to sell them as a collection of individual 7 inches on shellac discs, but they'd sell them in individual sleeves that were all stapled together in what was like a photo album.
Fantastic.
So it was called a record album, or an album of discs.
Yeah.
And it just stayed. Even when the LP came out, they still called it an album, and we still call it an album. When you go into Spotify, you go into your profile, it still says saved albums. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it completely makes sense.
Yeah, it's crazy how we just stick with these things once they get named.
Yeah.
Like a mixtape. Rappers are always dropping mixtapes.
Yeah,
They
of course,
they
yeah.
haven't used tape ever in their lives, but they're still dropping mixtapes all over the place, just because that was what was the norm when rap music first exploded or started to become a thing on the streets in the 70s and 80s. They were making mixtapes, so it sticks, and it's still cool to do it and talk about it. So it's weird how language and lingo sticks with things even though they're completely irrelevant now. It's nice. But yeah, long players, music on LPs and 12-inch vinyl only became a thing in 1948 when it finally got released by Victor RCA and stuff like that. And it was 22 minutes a side. Before that, there was, but it wasn't for home use. The first long players, which played for about 30 minutes, were these long players in cinemas.
Oh, very good, yeah.
Which you'll still find in like really, really vintage old cinemas in the US. So basically, when the talkies started in the early 30s, late 20s even, they needed, because they had long strips of film which could play about 20 to 30 minutes of film, and you needed music to go with it. Obviously you had the piano player there in the old times, but when the talkies came around, they needed sound to go with it, so they created these big heavy fucking discs players that got put in where the projector was in a cinema, a theater. And they actually played, the difference between these is they were massive and they were so robust and absolutely would never fit in your home. But they actually played from the inside out. and
Oh wow, right.
and they
Oh,
look
that's really cool.
they look very different to like
Yeah.
even a phonograph or anything like that. But they use them for that and also transmission. During World War Two, there was recordings sent out for like spies and different things like that for code and everything that was on like similar sort of stuff that was long playing and could play for about half an hour, sending out
Wow.
transmissions to radios around Europe and stuff like that. So it did exist. Extended audio, long playing did exist before it was marketed. But once again, it was always on shellac. Vinyl and PVC and stuff like that only became a thing in 1948 with home use and with the invention of just the normal record players that we all know now.
Mm.
But then that's 48, but we still like jazz records were a big thing, but it wasn't, say, until the late 50s when you started to get pop stars. And obviously, people had more money and it was more in people's houses, which you spoke about before. You had opera that was big and different types of
Yeah.
things that were big, but now we're getting into like rock and roll. And like even Elvis never really had an album. Buddy Holly didn't really have an album. They might have had greatest hits because singles were just a big thing. Kind of, we've gone full circle with the whole single thing, really, with Spotify in the late 50s. But yeah, it wasn't until like the early 60s that we started to have albums. And the Beatles would have been the first big people to consider the structure of their albums. So one thing that was very interesting with the Beatles was they, from A Hard Day's Night onwards, started to structure the songs in a certain way that they would flow into each other, or that you do it like a show. You structure a show, but they were
Yeah.
starting to structure the recordings like that. That they'd have the big piece at the start and maybe a big ending and a more mellow middle and stuff like that. They started to get annoyed because they were doing it and it was getting released in England like that, but then Capitol Records in the States were just kind of trimming the fat and getting rid of the filler
Yeah.
songs and just putting the singles on it. And it wasn't then until like Revolver and Rubber Soul came around that the Beatles started putting their feet down, being like, no, you're releasing it exactly how we were releasing it because we have a bit of a concept behind this now.
Mm.
This whole album has like a feel to it. It has like its own identity. It can't just be smushing all our songs together and putting that out. This has a story to tell. So that was the first time it was really being done in pop music. And once again, harken back to like classical music almost, but a collection of music running for that length and telling a story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that all Sgt. Pepper's being like the first big album that everyone on earth needed to have. That was when Beatle fans stopped buying the singles just and started buying the albums. And you had people rolling it in then with the counterculture of it. Because anyone can go buy a single and dance around for 2 minutes and then grow out of it. And that's kind of the end of your little Beatles teenage phase. But people were then starting to get like obsessed with genres, like psychedelic music. And psychedelic music was, due to the influence of drugs, things can go on a bit longer than 2 minutes. So that was like a cultural stamp. I think that's now a very interesting thing with albums, is that albums became more than 30 minutes of music that they started to become like these cultural imprints on society, and vice versa. The album could shape society or society could shape the album, and when we now look back on them, they're classic albums. And why are they classic albums? Not just because they were fantastic music there in lots of cases, but it was because they really represent 1967. Sgt. Pepper's really represents 1967. The Doors' first album really represents 1967. Velvet Underground and Nico represents a different side of 1967.
Mm.
But like, this is why they're culturally significant. They're almost like, carbon dating of something. It's like, listen to that and you'll understand why that year was important. This has been happening with lots of things, because then you get into like Nevermind the Bollocks in 1977. Why was that significant? Listen to the songs on that, like Anarchy in the UK. This is like Thatcher era. It's like
No,
we're getting into
absolutely.
that. The resistance against, God Save the Queen. It was embodied what was going on historically. And this is why, Ian, you'll love this. When you watch Reeling in the Years, sometimes their music choice is so important because it really represents a feeling at the time. Yeah, sometimes albums can be like that absolute, you listen to it and you're transported even though you never lived. Like, I put on Sgt. Pepper's and you feel like you're in 1967.
Absolutely, completely.
And they capture a feeling of a time, and that's why They're so important. They're just as important as like a book or a painting or anything like that. Like a painting from the Renaissance or something absolutely represents where we were at as a civilization in those years. The level of technology we had, the level of thought we had, the level of philosophy we had, everything. And that's why they're considered classic albums and still relevant. Yeah, it goes all the way up, like Nevermind by Nirvana, the Britpop stuff like Oasis, all these things like are just absolute representations of the time they were in. And there's plenty of classic albums I don't like. Like I don't like the music, but I absolutely appreciate why they were big at the time. And now that we're getting into the internet, that we have like the death of the album. It's singles and quicker and faster music. At first, I was thinking, oh, it's not a bad thing. It's good that we're moving forward. It's kind of good that there isn't such a thing as album sales and stuff like that anymore. But I think communally, it really brought people together that there was like an album that everybody had to get. Worst thing about what is happening now is the fact that there's so many distractions. With an album, you were stuck with it.
You had to invest time in it. Like you had to sit down. You had to, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think not many artists, like back then, people wrote songs for Elvis and they released them because it was just going to be money, money, money. And now it's almost like quick release something that, it's only a minute long and we can add it to videos and it could be in an ad and money, money, money. But I think the album, maybe there was a time in the 80s when it was like Michael Jackson and stuff where it was being made as money. But album has always been, like, isn't the attention span of a human 40 minutes? That's why lectures are 40 minutes long.
Yes, yeah.
It's why albums are 40 minutes long. And I think it is the perfect time to indulge in what an artist is about.
I think with an album, or sorry, I should roll back with a song. I think, a song in its very nature it's a very concise, small amount of time window into, an artist's intention or whatever, But it's a flick in the pan, like, flash in the pan, that's it, it's gone. Whereas I think with an album, like an artist has to invest, his or her time into, constructing this, that best represents them, what they feel, nearly like a play with several acts. You know what I mean? You're taking on this artistic journey with the singer songwriter through an album, whereas a song, yeah, it can only have maybe one of the very long prog rock songs of the the late 60s, early 70s. But I think that's why I love albums, because you feel like you're on a journey from start to finish with the artist, like,
Yeah, like you can be taken on a journey and you can also just get to know, or you can get a message across as an artist.
Yeah.
Even if it's in no way connected, like you listen to just 10 songs before you realize you actually like an artist or not. Like it's not fair on an artist to only like one of their songs. It's like an artist has more of a chance of making money if you stay with them for 40 minutes and buy something of theirs, which is 40 minutes. They have more chance of staying alive as an artist and producing more. If you're only liking their singles, or if you only like one of their songs, yeah, it's unfair on the artist nearly.
But it's awful, isn't it? It's a real symptom of how the likes of Spotify dish out music to you now. Like you have your song radios, not album radios. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to physically click, the three dots and go to view album, or go to album, and it's terrible, but that's a lot of effort to some people. Or
yeah, for me, it even is sometimes.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, sometimes I'll even click into the album and I'm like, oh, wow, there's 16 songs on it.
Yeah.
Where am I going to find the time to listen to 16 songs? You're like, oh, cop on.
Yeah.
But like everything, like how vinyl should have died out, it hasn't, because there's a certain group of people that really want to listen to it. It's obviously died out on a big scale because obviously technology moves, and you're left with the people that just really want to listen to it and like it. Yeah, just like the album, it should die out. Realistically, it should be dead and gone because we consume music with song radio and singles and YouTube videos and different things like that. But it hasn't. There's still people who absolutely only make albums, because some people only write stuff like that. Like King Gizzard are an album band, like massively, in that they do the concept album and they release albums. when I think of King Gizzard, I don't go, that song, wow, what a song. I go, that album, check out that album. Because that's just how they create. They think using 40 minutes. Like, it's a perfect time frame to fall in love with an artist.
Absolutely. I've always favored the album format over single, and I think you'll notice in particular with me that I grow frustrated, with new releases an awful lot these days, where they are just putting you out a song or two. I completely understand why, and I know that's how it's all marketed now, and I know that's how a lot of the younger generation are used to consuming music now. I personally get quite frustrated with it, and when the album eventually does come out, I'm delighted, because I can immerse myself in an album. you know.
This is the other angle I've also taken from it, is you can be an old fogey and just kind of go, well, I think I think it should be 40 minutes. But the reason I do think that it should be albums that you, as you just said, immerse yourself in, is that I fear that with the distraction culture, because even as I'm saying, I'll click into an album that has 16 songs on it and I'll go, oh, that's 40 minutes. How will I not get distracted for 40 minutes? And I'm horrible. Like, since the internet has been in my pocket, I'm awful for getting distracted. I only listen to songs. I get bored. I start searching something. Sure, while I'm on the phone, I might as well look at Instagram. Sure, when I'm there, I might as well look at this, and then I'll look at emails, and then I'll check out. I'll have to Google what that word means, and I'll Google that time, or Whereas, like, I'm supposed to be listening to music here, but I'm doing all these things as well, and I'm not. I'm not loving music as much as I did before I had all the distractions. So I really do hope that people who have only ever experienced music through the internet are getting the same love that I used to all the time and can do now when I discipline myself. I really hope they're getting it somehow, because it's horrible to think that people aren't getting that absolutely immersed feeling from music and movies and art. It's really bad if people aren't just plugging in and listening to 40 minutes of what one artist or group of people create with all of their power. Yeah, because that's what an album is. It's that's someone's mind in 40 minutes. Someone creating something. It's their Sistine Chapel. It's their Mona Lisa. And I'd feel bad if they aren't getting the feelings that people did for 60 years there. If is life that fucking, like, just scatty?
I know. Well, we are here to present to them the merits of albums, Frank, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to get people onto albums.
Yes. I think after this message, Ian, you're going to give them some examples.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be back after these messages.
Yep. Niall, come here to me now while I have you. You know Jazzer Roach from Willow Drive? I do, yeah. Well, the rumour has it now that he's cheating on the missus, if you know what I mean. Like, oh, go away. I won't. Rumour has it now that he's been throwing the leg over the single fat one from down the road. Oh, Lord. You know, down the dirt, like, down the dog. Say nothing to no one know about that. Don't. Right? See you later, son. Bye, 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 bye. Alright, hello. Right, there's Keith here. Alright, Keith, what you and you cunt? I'll be making my way up your neck of the woods there in the next week with that special delivery, yeah? Alright, mate, what you got for me? I'll be coming up with a few lovely kilos of cocaine. Oh. I'll have them happy pools. Oh. I'll be keeping you Scottish boys all pepped up for the holidays, you know what I mean? The sunny days will be coming. Oh, you fuck, get my drift? Yes, I do. Yeah, I'll be selling that off, mate. A grand. Fuck. About 10 grand's worth, you know. Are you fucking serious, mate? It's a wee bit expensive. Yeah. Yeah. I'll have lovely pills. I'll have the bags of cocaine. Oh, mate. Control yourself, mate. Control yourself. I can't fucking control myself, mate. I can't. And I'll also have some skeg. Oh. You want skeg too? Well, there's a few boys around here that would definitely be looking for a bit of skeg, hey. Have you got any Yip Jump Fizzy bangers? I'm looking to stick 'em up my arse and get absolutely fucking mad with it, pal.
Oh,
Get absolutely fucking demented, if you know what I mean, Keith. Keith, do you know what I mean, Keith? I'm looking to get absolutely fucking demented out of my mind, Keith. You get my drift, mate? I'm picking up what you're putting down, Andy. I want to get arseface put on women's tights to wake up by the docks, mate. Okay. I might have something that will do that to you. Anyway, it'll be nice to do business with you. I'll see you next week. Keith fit? Yep. Goodbye, Keith. I love you. Hiya. Yeah, just to let you know, the protest is definitely going ahead tomorrow. Cool. Yeah, 12 o'clock at the Four Courts. Cool. Is this the homeless one? Yeah, no, this the pandemic one. Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so, well, fucking whatever. Like, just turn up and we'll cause a ruckus anyway. Fuck yeah. Fuck Fine Gael. Yeah. Fuck Leo. Cool. See ya.
Whatever dodgy shit you want to talk about over the phone, just be assured that it's end-to-end encrypted here at WhatsApp, and we're definitely not listening to you. So go, talk complete bollocks with your friends. WhatsApp. Sound.
Great record.
Excellent album. We learned a lot from
Great
it.
record.
And welcome back. That was an ad. Hope you enjoyed it. We don't know what the ads are yet. We haven't done them. So you've just you've enjoyed some ad. And but yeah, we're talking about albums. We are harking back for why they were so seminal and classic and culturally significant, and I think just significant to individuals as well. And Ian has got some fantastic examples of just that.
Cheers, Frank. Well, yeah, just, when we were discussing there before the break, how an album is kind of this, in general, 40-minute piece where the artist has basically, given you an insight into their mind, it's a work of art that they're presenting to you for 40 minutes, the certain type of album that I'm going to be discussing for the next few minutes really does this tremendously well, and it is the concept album. The concept album, I mean, it's essentially it can be a story, based on a kind of central character. It could be nearly kind of like a play, as I said earlier on, with various acts in it, or it could just be unified by a kind of common theme where kind of songs are loosely related to. Doesn't have to be about a character per se, but that's really the essence of a concept album. And I was just looking it up there during the week about the kind of roots of a concept album, because I mean, if you think about it, like an awful lot of albums are, would be concept really, because there is something central behind an album, that drives the artist to write it, but it's amazing because I was just looking at, some like music historians, and a lot of them kind of say that the first kind of concept album was Woody Guthrie's Dust Bowl Ballads in 1940. I was like, wow, going all the way back. And the reason why is that it's these collection of songs by Guthrie that focus specifically on the Dust Bowl era, and the hardship that it entailed with, the people's livelihoods. Like, terrible. I was going to say, uprooting people, but that's a terrible pun. Just we shouldn't acknowledge that. But terrible.
I didn't get that for a while.
Yeah. Good God. But anyway, but it's mad anyway. So like that was kind of considered the first concept album. Obviously if you fast track through the decades, you do have the likes of Sgt. Pepper then, who kind of really brought it home, to the masses of what a concept album can be and how people can completely fall in love with it. It's a snapshot into time and place. It's like a touchstone of, as you said, like a counterculture, that type of thing. It's a time capsule essentially. It's amazing. But For myself, I think there's a few concept albums that really stick out for me in terms of they're personal favorites of mine, but also they are still incredibly relevant today. And the hundreds of thousands of plays on Spotify and the 150th reissue on 200-gram vinyl,
Yeah.
super deluxe ultra, editions will
Ultimate.
ultimate, yeah, will prove that they are still very much relevant. So I kind of just cherry picked a few that really stood out to me, and obviously there'd be big omissions because I'm only looking at 3 or 4. Again, these are ones that stand out for me. There are going to be ones that people say, oh, why didn't you include this or that? But anyway, to me, the 70s really show some fantastic concept albums. Like it was such a decade for it, be it true progressive rock or rock itself. And then you kind of go into the whole post-rock world, but I kind of started off with it, David Bowie's Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. So really with this, I mean, the overarching concept is you have this guy, who wants to make it big. And as the title track suggests, 5 years. He's given himself 5 years to make it big, he sets off, and does this whole 5-year thing. And he gets his band together and he does start to get incredibly big. And the reason why I think this is such a fantastic insight into 70s music is that you did have the rise of these big mega groups in the 70s. You had the likes of Led Zeppelin, like you had all these big, you had T-Rex, you had all them, the glam rock. And of course, Bowie himself, Ziggy is glam, So it was nearly kind of semi-autobiographical, really, Ziggy Stardust. But anyway, it captures it so well, this big rise to fame, and he has his song Star on it, which shows that. But what's really interesting halfway through the album, it starts to touch on the kind of maybe mental faculties of this person who's trusting to fame, who's doing it day in, day out type thing. Because there's a song called Hang On to Yourself, and obviously the title suggests you have to keep yourself grounded through all of this, And as the album goes on, then it shows that the fame is getting bigger and bigger and the pressure's getting more and more. And eventually Ziggy snaps and he just calls an end to it all. Rock and roll suicide, it's called. He just, that's it. He can't deal it anymore. And sure, we know so many bands who went out like that, especially in the 70s. They just burnt out. I hate to say it, but Thin Lizzy would have been one of them, because Phil went off on his own then. I think as a kind of touchstone for the big bands of the 70s, the rise and fall, as the name suggests, it's a fantastic concept album that kind of encapsulates that. Even, like post 70s, just the general story of the rise and fall of fame. I think that touches with a lot of people, and as I said, the kind of current plays it gets suggests that it is still kind of a touchstone for a lot of people.
Yeah. Just what you're saying there about its Spotify plays and stuff. There is like that kind of mystery of like, is it getting so many Spotify plays because it's just, oh sure, it's David Bowie and he's a legend and we won't question it, or is it getting it because it is just fucking fantastic? And I think it's a combination of both. You can advertise to young people over and over again that these guys are classics and they're amazing, but the quality of music will actually make them excited to listen to it. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. And it kind of brings me nicely on to another big seminal concept album. It still kind of touches on the whole concept of fame. It's a good few years later. It's in 79, and it's more to do with the kind of jaded rock star. That he's already had his big fame. And he's still doing his tours and that, but he just, you can't really hack it anymore, This big album, what is it, Frank? It's The Wall.
Oh, yes.
By Pink Floyd,
yeah.
So this is obviously around a central character called Pink. And, you don't have to get too far into the album to realize that massive hints and tipping of the hat to Syd Barrett here, This kind of goes a bit of a step further than Ziggy Stardust in that it's very inward looking, this album, as in like your own kind of mental anguish that you might go through where you cut yourself off from people and from society really in general, and what that can do to someone, like I think that's what the whole album's about really, culminating at the very end where there is a bit of an intervention, be it from friends or family or the industry itself, and you are kind of plucked back, in or out of your rut type thing. But there's a really, and it's mad, because I've heard the album so many times, and you never really think about it until you properly do some research. But there's a tiny little snippet at the end, and a bit of audio, and it passes really quick, and it's really, really low, and it's spoken word, and you'd miss it, and you just think, oh, what the hell was that? But it's basically, isn't this where we started, or isn't this how we came in? Isn't this how we came in? Is what it is, and it's a real worrying, nearly like the end of The Clockwork Orange. It's like, oh, I was cured, all right,
Very good.
Yeah, so it's an awful dark twist at the very end, where you just think everything's okay.
Yeah.
But again, that's, I think, as a concept album, what am I trying to say? It probably has a larger appeal in terms of the human condition, really. In terms of anguish and anxiety, and what it can do to a person. I think that's where The Wall really comes into its own, rather than it just being a big fantastic album. The kind of last one I just want to touch on, it's from the same year, later on in the year. It's by the late and great Frank Zappa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And this is Joe's Garage, acts 1, 2, and 3. The whole, I chose this one for a reason, because, when you look at it straight up, it's quite a similar kind of tone to Ziggy and The Wall, and especially Ziggy, because it's kind of Joe is obviously this adolescent teenager in LA, a garage band type thing with his friends, and he starts and gets famous and big and all that. But that's not really the point of Joe's Garage. The big overarching concept that Frank Zappa wanted to hit home. And this is, I think, why it's still so to the fore as an album. And I think this is why an awful lot of people get into it, especially in this modern era, is it's all about the dangers of censorship and big government, basically, or like the large state, that type of thing, the big state. Because at the time, Zappa, he wrote it in response to the Iranian Revolution in '79.
Okay.
Where Iran brought in these powers to basically outlaw Western music, and make rock illegal.
The full-blown Islam state sort of thing, yeah.
100%, yeah, the full-blown thing. Frank Zappa, obviously, he was up in arms with this, because he absolutely detests censorship of art in any form, So this was his response to that, and it's really, I think it's more a cautionary tale of what the likes of big governments can do if they're allowed to just completely, run away with themselves and not be checked. You know what I mean? And we've all seen it. We've seen it through the decades of what it can do, like be it censorship of art or curtailment of other civil liberties.
Yeah.
But what I really like then with how he's broken in, obviously he has it like a play. So he has acts 1, 2, and 3, so like the first act is, Joe's exploits, so when he's starting off, like, and then he has his various sexual exploits as well. Yeah. And when you get on to act 2, it gets really kind of strange. But this, like, act 2 is when the big state basically gets involved, and they find him, like he's playing this illegal music, and they throw him into prison. As you can imagine, with Zappa, he won't shy away from the more gritty parts of prison life. Yeah. So let's leave it at that. And then Act 3. Act 3 is probably one of the more interesting ones, because Act 3 is all about, we are now living in the complete dystopian society, and it's about reminiscing of a time when, you could play music, and Joe was a nice kid. He used to cut the grass, for his neighbors, that type of thing. And also the central scrutinizer being the main central character narrating Joe's life as we go through it. Central scrutinizer is like some fucking government official, basically, But he reveals to us at the end that Joe has now finally gone insane through his treatment, in prison, and the suppression of him being able to write his music and be creative. it kind of ends, the album ends with this big, massive imaginary, well, as the central scrutinizer called, imaginary guitar solo in Joe's head, and I absolutely love it. I love it as a concept album. It's fantastic. But there you go anyway. So, at absolute face value, it is kind of like the whole rise and fall of fame thing, like Ziggy Stardust, but at a more deeper level it is about the cautionary tale of censorship and the big state, But they're kind of my 3 concept album offerings and the general kind of whirlwind.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of some honorable mentions there for concept. I think one concept album that doesn't actually get credited as a concept album very much because it is completely standalone songs. Hail to the Thief.
Of course, yeah.
Is very, like, if you have like the deluxe version of that and you have like the booklet and stuff, that's very Big Brother.
No, completely.
No, I'm happy you picked them because I didn't know them, so it's good to hear new things.
I hope you go off and listen to a few of them, Frank.
As I said, I'm slowly and secretly getting into more 70s music.
Excellent.
It's almost like it's like learning to ride a bike in your 30s. It's like, oh shit, I'll sneak off now and listen. I'll listen to T-Rex for the first time.
Hello, just a bottle of water, please, and a pack of potato, thanks. Oh, sure, no bother. How's you gotten? Oh, fine, thanks. How are you? Oh, I should know, sure, I'll marry God bless you. I don't know what the hell this poor old fella's saying. But sure, God, I want a bottle of water and some crisps.
Sound all too familiar? I know. Bartholomew Brabazon III here, and I am going to introduce you all to a revolutionary, groundbreaking app that will translate local dialect into the Queen's English, so all can understand and have a wonderful time in our lovely countryside here in Ireland. As things start to open up again, with restrictions lifting, of course all you townies and city folk out there would like to visit our wonderful, wonderful countryside and interact with the locals, buy some of their fruit and veg, or maybe some of that lovely distilled bottled water straight from the well. Go to any of the well-known app stores and simply search Brabazon's Local Dialect Interpreter. Simply download it on any Android or Apple phone, and you will get 10 free translations at first, with in-app purchases thereafter. Have a listen to some of our examples.
How's you gotten?
How are things?
That's where the sun's splitting the stones there.
It is a very pleasant day.
As for, poor Mary, she's gone with her chips.
Poor Mary has now passed away.
As for, yourself, sure, bombs away.
Well now, goodbye. Brabazons, making language universal.
Okay, Ian. So, all those classic albums, concept albums, which you just spoke about, I imagine you probably own most of your favorite concept albums on LP, vinyl.
Yes.
That you listen to and enjoy at home. Which is still a very popular thing. Still, a lot of people, record sales have actually gone up for the first time in 2017 than they did since 1994. It was the highest they'd been since 1994. So yeah, they're getting more popular. And obviously they sound amazing. We love the natural compression. We love the warmth of them. But there's some downsides to vinyl in that they're not very environmentally friendly. PVC and the nitrocellulose lacquer stampers is actually like really toxic. It's like nail polish. And obviously from a stamper that you make out of this PVC vinyl, you can only get like 1,000 copies out of at most before you have to basically create a whole new glass master. So it's impractical. The sound can deteriorate if you once you get to the end of it. Like the first few are amazing, but once your glass master starts to get a bit knackered, after 1,000 copies it starts to sound or 10,000 copies, sorry, it starts to degrade. So the last few copies are pretty bad. Why haven't we improved this? since the 60s and 70s. We've been using the same format for 40 years. There's not many things that we haven't improved. We've made them heavier. That's about it. 60s and 70s was renowned for trying to cut costs and make thinner vinyls, which end up warping and have more crackles and pops and stuff like that. So some stuff from the 70s can sound fairly crap. But what if I told you they were currently in the works of making HD vinyl?
Okay, HD vinyl. Now, I'm guessing this is going to be a play on the acronym HD. Like, is it?
No.
Oh, it's not.
It just means high definition. As I just pointed out all the problems there with vinyl. They're not environmentally friendly, and most people who like vinyl are people who would absolutely be pushing to save the environment. And you're usually listening to music by people who will be pushing those agendas too. And also another thing is the way the needle tilts on a vinyl is that the further it goes into the center means that it gets more lo-fi and there's less clarity as it goes in. That's just physics, and it's just how it goes on the surface. So there's an Austrian guy called Gunter Leubel, who's the CEO and founder of Rebeat and the HD vinyl. Basically, he has come up with this whole concept called disrupting the vinyl process. And he's basically come up with the idea of a ceramic stamper, which you would 3D print. And you would use it with software called Perfect Groove software. So you would basically take a 3D print of the topography of a sound wave and print it onto a ceramic stamper instead of the PVC stamper. And your glass master would be ceramic. And it'd be absolutely perfect, which means that your vinyl wouldn't have to tilt and it would never ever degrade. You could make 20,000 copies and they'd all sound identical.
Wow.
And your software, which is like lasers. Lasers have never been used. Laser printing has never been used with vinyl. So you'd use your software to upload your tape or your whatever source your audio signal is coming from, and it would perfectly laser it onto your ceramic surface. So you can print off as many as you want, and it will be laser printed. There will never be any room for error. It'll be way more environmentally friendly, and it will always be perfect, basically. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's incredible, the sound of it. No pun intended there, but anyway. Well, first of all, I'd like to go on record that I purchase the vast majority of my vinyl are second-hand vinyl, or probably third or fourth hand. So I do seek my first and second pressings from reputable sellers. But but yeah, look, the idea of HD vinyl, what I see after vinyl, or what I go for with a vinyl. I suppose there's two things that I go for. One, if it's an old vinyl that, it's the complete, start to end analog process, which is perfect, that's exactly what I go for. And two, if it's a new vinyl, a brand new vinyl, and the recording process may have been digital, which a lot of them are, and then they go press to vinyl, like yourself, Frank, a dynamic range of a vinyl, it wins, hands down for an awful lot of different formats. Include FLAC there,
Yep.
But with this HD one now, right? So it's basically laser pulses or 3D printing, is it?
So that's the whole thing. It still can be tape to tape.
Yeah.
Because basically what you're doing is you're just creating the groove using the laser and 3D printing.
Yeah.
The biggest horrible middleman is the toxic PVC vinyl.
Yeah.
That is your glass master, basically. You'll still need actual PVC vinyl to print in the thousands. But your glass master, which is the most toxic one, and has to be changed every 10,000 copies, will be this ceramic piece that can just always be kept on a shelf every time you want to go reprint it. And it has the sound wave perfectly lasered into it. It's using software to basically iron out all the creases, basically. And there's no chance of anything ever going wrong and you having to throw out a shitload of this toxic material.
The concept of it's fantastic. Now, when I say concept, has this actually been done, Frank? Like, are there tests being carried out? Or
so it's currently being done, and they came out with it in May 2020, and it's being funded mainly by an Australian company.
It's still the vinyl format, like.
Oh yeah, big time. It's
Yeah.
just like his idea, like his concept. He said he was sitting down talking with a friend. They just said, "Isn't it crazy how like we don't make cars like we made them in the 70s, but we're still making fucking vinyl the way we made them in the 70s. Why haven't we changed this? Is it like some sentimentality, like that we just think that we can't improve on this because then it's not pure anymore?" You know?
Well, it's interesting to say this because I was reading an article there a couple of weeks back on the vinyl process and the cutting process, and you have these absolute dedicated artisans essentially making up the various cuts and all that, and the lathe process and stuff.
Yeah.
It is an absolute craft. So would this essentially be getting rid of these people? Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's why there's kickback against it. Is because you've got the purists. You've got the purists basically saying, "Oh fuck this, we don't want to change it because that's like giving into digital, or it's giving into it's changing it. It's getting rid of the art and all this sort of stuff." But then it's
but as you said, sorry Frank, but just to get it clear for all our listeners, it is still preserving the analog waveform.
Oh yeah, as you said, it's just kind of the
To
anarchy.
get it clear for me, like, 'cause this is how I'll be on board, Frank.
Like you can still just get a waveform from tape, and like a ceramic is physical. It's it's not digital. You're using the digital laser to perfectly cut the grooves in the ceramic, so there's no human error or like mechanical error put into it.
So it's like a perfect duplicate of that
It's the
analog waveform.
Yeah, cut into a ceramic, which will then be filled with physical vinyl, which will then physically be put on a record player and physically touched by a stylus and amplified and put out speakers to physically go into your ears. It's for me. I'm on board. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm taking the soup here.
No. I think now that we have really trashed it out there, I'm on board. I'm signing up to this. HDMI, baby.
Yeah. HC vinyl. They'll probably be like 500 quid when they come out.
on 800 gram vinyl.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
After all my shite talk, I won't actually fucking splash out and get one. But yeah, I'll leave that where it is. Think what you want about it. You'll be able to think what you want about it when it eventually hits us. Which it mightn't, I don't know. I could be talking absolutely fucking selling snake oil to you here. Go get in contact with Gunther Leibel. Would you like to play a quizzine? I'm going to do the soundbite for a quiz right here.
It's time to play a fucking game. Yes, it is a fucking game, and this fucking game is called
Guess the Album Sales. And we're back. I've done this on classic albums, and I've done it all by, to date, their sales.
Oh, okay.
So I'm basically going to put two heavyweight classic albums to you, and you have to tell me which one you think sold more. This has nothing to do with Spotify. It's nothing to do with plays. It's to do with physically sold copies, be it vinyl, tape, CD, and once again they're estimates because there's no exact figure on them.
Yeah.
Question 1 for highest selling classics. So Nirvana's 1991 Nevermind or Nevermind the Bollocks 1977 by the Sex Pistols. Which one to date has sold more millions?
Ooh, I'm probably going to go with Nevermind Nirvana.
You are correct.
Yeah.
By a long way. Nevermind the Bollocks has sold 14.5 million worldwide since 1977, and Nevermind has sold 30 million.
Wow, bloody hell!
Yeah, it sold 5 million or something like in the first year. So like,
yeah, like I knew it. Just the time it was and all that, and the whole pop culture and that. It's definitely. I expect it to be more, and not that more, but yeah,
double. Yeah. Question 2. You should be invested in this one. So, Fleetwood Mac Rumours from 1977 or Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, 1973.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, okay, on complete commercial terms, I would probably go with Rumours.
You do see it in everybody's house, don't you?
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of into it. One has sold 5 million more than the other. Dark Side of the Moon has sold 45 million and Rumors has only sold 40.
God, that is actually surprising.
Yeah.
Obviously, out of Rumors and Dark Side is by far my favorite. But it's surprising. It's surprising.
It is. Okay, question 3. Bit closer to home. U2's Joshua Tree in 1987, or Oasis' What's the Story, Morning Glory in 1995.
Fuck. You two have such global success. Like, I go with U2.
You are correct, but not by much. Joshua
Okay.
Tree to date has sold 25 million, and Oasis has sold 22 million.
Oh God, they're not that far off.
What's the Story, Morning Glory is still in the Irish charts, in the
Wow.
the physical Irish charts. It has actually never left it since 1995.
That is phenomenal. Imagine you could say that about your own piece of work. You know.
Yeah, it's fucking huge in Ireland, and it's still
Amazing.
I think it's still like 2 or 3 of the highest selling vinyl in Ireland.
Wow.
I don't have
Wow.
it. I'd like to get it though. I want to get it now.
Do you know what? I don't have it either. So maybe the two of us could go and get it at
there
some
we go.
point.
We'll push it up to number 1. We'll get it.
Yeah.
Get Dua Lipa off the top spot.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4, another one close to your heart here. Led Zeppelin 4 in 1971, or Sgt. Pepper's by the Beatles 1967.
Why are you doing this to me, Frank? Okay, right. Okay, I have to be objective here. I go with Sgt. Pepper's.
That's what I would have went for, but it isn't. Zeppelin
Wow.
4. Zeppelin 4 has sold 37 million copies worldwide, whereas Sgt. Pepper's has only sold 32.
Oh my God, I'm actually. Well, look, should I be surprised? Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, I think just as well as you said, the 70s you had super rock bands like
Yeah.
who were just like obsessed.
No, I shouldn't
over.
be. I shouldn't be surprised at that. Yeah.
So the last one is 80s fantastic. Prince's Purple Rain in 1984, or Madonna's Like a Virgin also in 1984.
That's very good. It's like neck and neck in the same year. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm gonna go Madonna.
Prince has nipped her by 4 million. 25
Oh.
million for Prince and 21 million copies to date for Like a Virgin.
Heck, right. Fuck.
So
Okay.
there you go. Some record sales there for you.
The Elephant Room recommends.
And we're back. So, Room recommends. We got to stick to the albums, I suppose. Ian, what do you got for us?
Okay, so I wasn't completely truthful earlier on about my 3 favorite concept albums. I do have a 4th favorite that I was waiting until the Room recommends, and it's not my 4th favorite. It's my all-time favorite album. Closely, okay, this album and Led Zeppelin 4 are probably on par with each other, you know. But this one, anyway, you touched on it, you know, just there a few minutes ago, Frank. It is none other than The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
Did you know that has sold 45 million copies worldwide today?
I know now, yes. The Dave Gilmour Pink Floyd lineup at its absolute best. Why this is such a cultural touchstone, I think, with people in general, is that it is such an ageless album because for the very point that the actual concept behind it is the actual human experience. You know, it starts with Speak to Me / Breathe, where it literally goes through from birth to death. That's what that album does, you know, and all the trials and tribulations in between, you know, money, all that, you know, paranoia, then us and them, you know, where you may have a breakdown, you know, brain damage. Like it's just, it's the human condition in an album. You touched on earlier on about how the technique of segueing is used, you know, in concept albums, especially with King Gizzard. Well, it started with this. You know?
Oh, well, this is absolutely, you don't have King Gizzard without Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, exactly. And like the band themselves, you know, when they were, obviously they've had countless of interviews on Dark Side, you know, but it was interesting because the late Rick Wright who's an absolutely, phenomenal keyboardist of the band. He said about Dark Side was that all four of them more or less had equal input into the album. So it was one of those kind of rare albums in a band like Pink Floyd where the likes of Roger Waters or Syd Barrett before him, they kind of, I wouldn't say let go of the reins, but they let the rest have a kind of equal say. So I think this is where you see Dave Gilmour kind of come more prominent in terms of writing melodies for the band, because a lot of the melody work on Dark Side comes from Gilmour rather than Waters, but a lot of the lyric writing is still Waters. So it's the start of that dynamic between the two of them. But it's just, I absolutely love the fact that it starts and ends with a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love it. And I have a fun fact for the album, Frank.
Go for it.
I'm nearly certain you've already heard about this.
Okay.
And a lot of our listeners probably have too, but some of them mightn't have. When I say Dark Side of the Rainbow, do you know what I'm on about?
No.
Fantastic. So, well, you may have heard of it already, but you mightn't have heard of it referred to as that. Have you ever heard of sticking on Dark Side of the Moon? Okay. But whatever format you like, your favorite format.
Yes.
And as soon as you hit play, you then turn on Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
So you've heard of this. It's phenomenal. Like, so I remember seeing it, a screening of it in college. I went with your beloved cousin, Tom, to see it. It's freaky, like, it is freaky, like, especially, like the inclinations in songs, the tone of songs and the scene it's at,
Yeah.
Now the band, they've said to this day that they never, sat down to write an album with Wizard of Oz, in mind, but it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, my recommends is an album that I haven't heard yet.
Is it a HD vinyl album, Frank?
I wish it's just any HD vinyl album. I've recommended them many times before. It's Crumb. Crumb are releasing an album on the 30th of April. It might be out even before this episode is out. So therefore I'm recommending it after I've heard it. Well, I'll just pretend I've heard it. Yeah, it's their new album, their second album. It's called Ice Melt. And it's going to have songs like Trophy, BNR and Balloon. Their previous 3 singles, which are just phenomenal. And both myself and Ian have pre-ordered it because we're so sure it's going to be good.
100%.
I've got it on opaque red vinyl, which is killing the environment. So I can't wait for the HD vinyl to come in. So yeah, that's my recommends. So I think collectively, I'll speak for Shane as well. All 3 of us are recommending that you go and listen to full length albums. Put your other silly priorities aside for 40 minutes and go get lost in something. But that's what it is. It's supposed to be like going to watch a movie. You put aside fucking an hour and a half and 2 hours to watch a movie, so why not do it for music?
No, absolutely. As you just said, Frank, there, yeah, I would highly recommend you go off and you listen to that fantastic audio story that is an album.
Yeah. And when HD vinyl comes out, absolutely. I'm going to get a job working for them, actually. Like, if next week we just have loads of ads from Gunther.
Actual ads this time.
Yeah, like, we've just completely taken the soups. Anyway, we'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for listening.
Good luck.